tax or law, which is the law of the sea, and the banking systems, are intent on keeping the distribution of the system in line with the energetic operations of life and death. The living feed the dead, so that the dead can be reborn into the living again in an endless cycle. The energy that we put into the sea through commerce is the main medium of transport to those in power, and is how this entire process continues to function. It is the intention of this work to make the listener aware of the terminology that is used in commerce, terms that the public is familiar with, but unfamiliar with in the true severity of their import. A tender is a boat for communication between ship and shore, and a ship that usually provides supplies to other ships as well. In the world of commerce as it stands, tender is something that is used as an official medium of payment. A medium is someone or something that serves as an intermediary between the living and the dead, and this makes sense when one understands that the purpose of commerce is to charge the dead so that they can be reborn. Tender is the middle tool that acts as this form of communication. A tender is also known as something which is used to propose a payment with, and the words are used on government legal tender promissory notes, erroneously referred to as money. To propose something is to be in the positive position with the offer, hence pro for positive and pose being a synonymous word for position. If the offer is accepted, the positions of polarity have been reversed between proposer and acceptor. The medium of exchange has thus been diminished of its own capacity through the energy used in this interaction, which is why all legal tender promissory notes lose their value with each use, just like a battery that loses its charge with each cycle of its protons and electrons through the neutron. This process has been called inflation, which leads us to our second term. Inflation is in basic definition a progressive increase in the prices of goods and services. This is related to the ocean or sea with an inflatable craft, which is usually a rescue boat of some kind used as a last resort after a shipwreck, for instance. People the world over have missed the point of the terms, that the purpose of bankrupting the nations was to serve as an indicator that this age is now using an inflatable craft which needs to be blown up with more fresh air currency to keep it afloat. This, of course, can only last for a short time until either a legitimate rescue arrives or the surviving crew members eventually all die. If one considers the larger planets as the ships and smaller planets as the rescue boats, this may make more sense to the listener. A cutter is a boat for communication between ship and shore. Merchant ships were called revenue cutters, and is where the term to cut a check is derived. To cut something is to reduce the amount or number of that thing. Here is the etymology for the word check. A deal is a plank of softwood, fir, or pine board on the deck of a ship. In commerce, it is known as a particular instance of buying or selling. To get a good deal was to refer to the area where certain goods were sold on the decks of merchant ships in times past. The deals were quite literally made on the deals of the ship. This is also why in card games you have a deck of cards where each player gets a deal. In a business, a salesman will also cut you a deal because on a ship's deck, deals needed to be cut, just like any other wood floor that is accomplished in the carpentry trade. A merchant is a business person engaged in retail trade. This is from the French word mer, meaning sea, ocean, whereby the word mermaid is derived, hence sea maiden. The suffix word chant means a repetitive song in which as many syllables as necessary are assigned to a single tone. Hence, a merchant is someone who sings a repetitive sea song or song of the sea because they wanted repeat customers. This is true when we follow the term repeat, which is linked etymologically to the word for feather. How? The English term repeat is cognate with the Latin repetere, meaning to return, from the Latin prefix re and petere, translated as to seek, attack, claim, desire. The Latin word petere gave rise to the Old High German fida, meaning wing, whereby wing is linked with the Sanskrit veti for it blows. The wind is what blows and was needed for the ships to continue on their merchant journeys. The Old High German fida is where the federal government derives its name from, which is the central power of government. And although not a part of the government is where the private institution known as the Federal Reserve takes its moniker from as well. Added to all of this, in sea terminology, to feather is to turn an oar while rowing, and a proper English synonym for feather is square, which can also be used to indicate the turning of an oar while rowing. A square is also by definition someone who doesn't understand what is going on, and the word square can also be correctly used as a verb to indicate that someone is being paid to settle a debt. Hence the phrase, "we're all squared up." Humanity is being shown through the enormous amount of square symbolism that they have no clue as to what this operation is about, and that part of the scheme is about paying off a debt to someone or something. That something is the feeding of Saturn through the feathering of energy into the square of that planet. As a transitive verb, the etymology of the word pay comes from the Latin piccare, which meant pitch, smear with pitch. Pitch was a heavy viscid substance like tar that was used to seal up the hulls of ships from water leakage. Of course, a tar is a noun for a man who serves as a sailor. In commerce terms, to pitch something is to offer it for sale from place to place, which is the reason for there being sales pitches. That's not the last of it. The word feather is linked with the word for father, And this is the hidden etymology of that. First of all, by taking out the first letter E in the word feather, we are left with father, while the English feather is linked back with the Old English feather and Dutch vader, whereby the correlating Dutch word vader means father. When we go back to the Sanskrit veti, meaning it blows, linked with the High German thide, we find an exact match in German with the German word Vati that translates into English as father. Isn't it quite interesting to note that this word is found in the first 4 letters of the great Roman institution known as the Vatican, which through this connection would mean the dog father, since can is the Spanish word for dog, as related to the dog star of Sirius, where the false gods that now control this world came from. Dog spelled backwards is God, and Vatican therefore also means the Godfather, which is why the Pope is also known as the Papa, since the Spanish Pope quite literally means Papa, and the basis of the word father is linked throughout the etymology for the term Pope. Add to this the fact that the related Italian term vedere means see, and is part of the reason why the Pope is also referred to as the Holy See. These organizations are also telling us who the father of this operation is: Saturn, Satan, since the eagle is the square feather, father, ether, or, that brought the light of duality knowledge to our species. Float, as in cash register float, is to be afloat, to stay on a liquid surface and not sink. It is also the time interval between the deposit of a check in a bank and its payment. Hence, when one is not afloat financially, they are said to be drowning in debt. That's when the loan sharks are sent after them. Float is derived from the Middle English float, meaning boat, and Old English flota, meaning ship. A sale is the general activity of selling, whereby the exact phonetic correlate is sale, which is why there are salesmen, which were and are necessary for the proper operation of a merchant sea vessel or business. When the sails are up, people will blow their legal tender fresh air currency on them so that the ship business can continue moving forward. That's the luck of the sail that gets a windfall, which is a word that means a sudden happening that brings good fortune, as a sudden opportunity to make money, and is the reason that the phonetic of merchandise is in actuality merchant dice. By definition, liquidation is the termination of a business operation by using its assets to discharge its liabilities, and is also known as the murder of a competitor. The first definition of liquidate is to get rid of someone who may be a threat by killing them, and in secondary terms is to eliminate something by paying off debts. The prefix word liquid gives us the automatic link to the waters of the sea. More esoterically, to liquidate something is to phonetically liquid-date them, which is why all ships that sit in their berth have what is called a certificate of manifest that is dated. Therefore, it is liquidated. This would be known as your birthday, where you came through the hips of the mother ship. The anagram of hips is ship, and the mother ship is the moon, which is the egg that brought you to port. The moon of sin that each of us was grown in before being docked in our port by going through the mother's vaginal canal. A canal is a long, narrow strip of water made for boats. When going to work, people report for duty because humans are the liquidated ships made mostly of water that have been eliminated to pay off an endless debt. We are brought to port and then docked by the doctor, and we now hold an off-ice office of duty where we have a post, which is why there is the post office. This is shown by the Dutch poort and French port, which both mean postage. Revenue is known as the entire amount of income before any deductions are made, which is according to government the income that is due to taxation. Revenue is a commerce term of the sea, as shown by the word revenuer, which is a revenue officer or boat. The word revenue is linked with sexuality as shown through the etymology, with revenue being derived from the Latin revenere or revenere depending on your interpretation of the Latin pronunciation, with venere meaning to come. Hence, revenere would mean to come again. Come is a vulgar term for a sexual orgasm, which is why the powers that be like to include this word in such commercial terms as income. The English word venire is a law term that means to summon a group of people for jury service. This is related to the religious term venial for a forgivable transgression or one that is pardonable. That's why there are venial sins. The Latin venia or venia meant a pardon and the granting of a privilege which people now know as a license, because the word license is rooted in licentiousness, which is indulgence in sensuality, and to be given license is to be given the motive to disregard any forms of self-restraint at the cost and expense of others and the environment. The archaic term venery translates as hunting and sexual intercourse, which is where the term venereal disease is derived, because commerce is about the hunt, where people hunt for a good deal, and it's about killing the competition, and why there are executors or execution sales. Continuing with the connections is the English word vendu, which means a sail, and a sail is phonetically a sail, because the Latin venti and ventus or venti and ventus both mean wind, the wind that's needed to blow the sails. The Italian vento also means wind, while the French law word vente gives us a sale, contract of sale. Of course, this is about selling us into slavery through the womb, which is shown in the English venter, meaning womb, that came from the same Latin spelling, and the related Latin masculine noun venus, meaning sale, purchase, since Venus represents the clams, money, bucks, used during our purchase. Venus is the Roman goddess of sexual love and generation, and the term venter is why the English language has in commercial terms a vendor or vendors. Humans are sold into commercial slavery, since venal means to be a mercenary, someone who is purchasable or bribable, while the Latin venalici translates as slave dealer. We are hunted in the chase during each purchase. This is the pure chase, where they make a clean kill, because to deprive something of everything that they have is to clean them out. They've taken you to the cleaners, which in esoteric terms means that after death, your mind and all of your known conscious history of this life will be erased and wiped out. The cache of your hard drive mind will be deleted, and then you will have a clean slate. This is why no one remembers where they have come from or where they are going. This is a fact, and one that makes many humans angry upon hearing it, because it is the truth that is easier to deny than face. We have been double-crossed as shown by a final relation that will be proven out with the Italian venti, Portuguese vint, and French vin, all translated as 20. The number 20 in Roman numerals is written as XX. We have been double-crossed and sold into this system. Cash is money in the form of bills or coins. The phonetic word is cash, which is a secret store of valuables or money. By reinterpreting the English, we might say that this could also be pronounced as catch. Cash is catch, or to make a good catch and then store it in the cache. The cache, as already outlined, is also the storage of our memories and experiences that is wiped out after death before we are brought back into the system again. This is where we are put on ice again, because we are frozen assets that have been taken off ice during life and then put back on ice during death. That's the reason for the saying cold hard cash. A synonym for cash is bury, which is where valuable items are kept because we are being held prisoner as valuable items. The dead are buried in boxes, and cash originally meant money box, and the English language derived the word from the French casse, meaning broke, which is why when you are out of money energy, you are said to be broke. Cash was also instituted from the Italian cassa for cash, case, and the Latin capsa, meaning locker, box, satchel, church nave. Capsa is synonymous with the Latin arca, meaning ark, coffin, money, wealth, cage, cell, because the Ark of the Covenant is truly about the recharging of cells in the moon that brings the debt back to life. Another Latin word for church nave is capsi, since the nave is the central area of the church, which is esoterically the vaginal canal that leads to the dead savior that rescues the dead from the clutches of sin, which is the Akkadian god of the moon, since sin is actually the moon and the celestial body of regeneration. This is what the church is symbolizing as you walk down the aisle of its ship, since the Latin navis means ship, and the Spanish nave also translates as ship, vessel for sailing on the sea. During generation, we are linked into this reality through the naval cord, with the word nave showing as being derived from the Old English nafella for naval. The military navy or naval fleet is connected to this as shown by the Latin navale, meaning dock, shipway, and naval is an English adjective to represent that which is connected with or used in the navy. We are the seamen fish that they seize in the seas of space and then put in their box, since the Latin box from the 1879 Lewis and Short Dictionary means fish, while the Latin capsa for box is a derivative of the verb capere, translated as seize, take hold, capture, that is related in the etymology to the English word for heave. At death we are recaptured, seized, and taken hold of to go to heaven, heaven. The English heave is manifested from the Middle English heaven, Old English heban, and is akin to the Old High German hevan, meaning to lift, and Latin capere, to take. To the beings who control this world, it is like shooting fish in a barrel. Cash flow is the excess amount of cash revenues over cash outlays in a given period of time. This is a necessary commerce term that indicates the cash flow of the sea. Banks are the financial institutions that accept deposits and channel money into lending activities. By the terminology of the sea, banks are the sloping edges of land that exist beside a body of water, like the river banks. The banks direct the currents or the currency of the cash flow. The banks are where the cash of dead are buried or stored, giving credence to the ancient accounts of dead spirits being stored in the moon. The debt or dead are deposited into the banks, and it is known as a cash deposit, whereby the debt or dead are then put on trial in front of a judge, as shown by the word bench. The court system is entirely based upon the principle of money and the energy that we create in commerce. So when someone states that it is the court of Queen's Bench, for example, they are actually saying that it is the court of the Queen's Bank. Right now we are in the game of life because we are not buried in the banks, but when we die, that is what happens. We become a security deposit and take a seat on the bench because we are taken out of the game to receive a rest. This is why a police officer will arrest someone when they need to receive a charge for a debt or sin, because they need to be given a rest between their trial. Branches are the separate divisions of the main financial institution, which in oceanic terms are the streams or rivers that are connected to a larger one. This would be akin to the rivers that flow into the ocean, or in biology, the arteries and vessels of blood that flow to the heart. All of our energy is flowing to one main source, and this is repeatedly shown in the words and terms. The branches of the tree of life are also the ribs connected to our spine that is caged the heart, earth, hence the rib cage. The implication of just this alone is something that is incredibly important to think upon. Currency is known as the metal or paper medium of exchange that is presently used. The phonetic for currency is current sea, or the current of the sea. Fractional currency is paper money that is valued in denominations of less than $1. This means that all of your paper money, no matter what denomination is written on it, 5, 10, 20, 50, etc., is all worth less than $1. The first recorded instance of this in the United States occurred in the years 1863 to 1876, which was a 10-cent fractional currency issued during the Civil War due to shortages of precious metals. As one can see, the words fractional currency were clearly listed right on the note, something that is not done today, which is a deception of those in power towards the public, seeing that all notes called money now are fractional reserve currency that are valued at a significant decrease from the basic monetary unit, which is 100 cents in many countries. The basic monetary unit would mean that 100 cents is valued at 100 cents, not 10 cents or 4 cents or nothing. This is, of course, the direction that we have been heading since the charges of the currency for the currents of currents E, have been increasing steadily. Isis, or this symbol in the esoteric symbolism, has been reawakening Osiris through our commerce currency charges. Current is the dominant flow of running water. This is why people stay current on their monthly payments, for fear of being taken down by the undercurrent. A rebate is to give a reduction in the price during a sale. The phonetic of this word is rebate, which is to bait the customer again and get them on board by hooking them with a more alluring deal. Liquid assets are assets in the form of cash or easily convertible into cash, which is likened to liquid water. Frozen assets are assets that are not available for current use and is easily linked with frozen water. We become the frozen assets when we are put back on ice and stored in the banks in the afterlife. Interest is commonly known as a fixed charge for borrowing money. The prefix word inter means to bury, while the suffix is rest. When someone has died, they are said to be at rest, and therefore we have the word interest, to bury those at rest. This would relate to the cache of goods that is buried in the banks, river banks. The latter three letters of est, gives us a further indication of the lunar and solar occult meanings, since in French and est in Italian are both the words for east, which is where the sun rises from its death each morning. It was buried in the west and rises in the east. Hence, in the morning, the sun appears to be rising from its burial place in the dawn of the east, giving us another indication for the true meaning of interest. This is also why people each day say good morning to each other, thus indicating the rising of the sun that came out of its burial chamber. The moon, Isis, takes the charges of souls to soul, as a pledge or payment to the sun. The sun rises because of the payment of the dead debt, and this is why there is so much sun symbolism in governments, major corporations, and secret societies throughout the world. Sun sacrifice has not gone away. It has simply become occulted. Mortgage is from the two French words mort, meaning death, and gage, meaning pledge. A mortgage is a death pledge, hence the commonly used saying to sign one's life away. They ask for a down payment to show good faith to the dead who are being recharged in the banks, since this transaction is sexually oriented, as shown by the French word for mortgage, which is hypothèque. This is from the Greek hypotheke, for security of a debt, from hypo, below, sub, and theke, case, receptacle, scabbard, while the French thèque is from the Latin theca, meaning case, box, vagina. It may be difficult to imagine, but the dead are reborn in the moon egg that is dropped each month by a woman, and this egg is their lifeboat that has come to rescue them. This already happened to each one of us, and will continue to occur in this prison indefinitely, because humanity is not prepared to accept the implications of this tremendous and daunting information. It is not a mistake that mortgages are for homes, because the pledge to the dead is about the luck, chance that each soul will have inside of their new home of birth, in whatever moon egg that happens to find them. This happens in hell, as shown by the Norwegian word hell, meaning success, luck. It's the luck of the die, because everyone who dies goes into the case, box, vagina, to try and find another home. That's the true biblical meaning of the fall, as determined through the etymology of the word case, from the Latin casus, for fall, chance, adventure, fortune, collapse. It's the light of luck as shown by the German hell, meaning bright, light, and the Middle Dutch luc, for luck, related to the Latin luce, for by daylight. It's the light of Lucifer, Lucifer, being given to the dead, where more children are born in the moon, with the French fer, meaning iron, being instituted from the Latin fer, meaning bearing, one that bears. This is why Lucifer is known as the light bearer, which is the light of the moon that has been pledged and paid to the dead. It gives the dead the life blood, which is filled with iron, which becomes our blood iron bars of DNA. And this entire operation is filled with irony, because it is, as Dante stated, a divine comedy, whereby irony is a synonym for sarcasm, and the word sarcasm is derived from the ancient Greek sarx, meaning flesh, because we are born into our prison of flesh with its iron cells of blood biology. On a more simplistic note, it's also odd that the French language needed to have a completely separate word for mortgage when the word mortgage itself is from two French words. But this simply shows again the need for those in control of humanity to disguise the truth in every possible manner. An undertaking is a promise or a guarantee given in any piece of work that is undertaken or attempted. As a noun, it is known as the trade of a funeral director, because in esoteric terms, this is the undertaking of the dead by the false light of the moon. An undertaker is one whose business it is to prepare the dead for burial. A stiff is the dead body of a human being, and also someone who refuses to pay or tip. Commerce and death go hand in hand. Capital is known as the assets available for use in the production of further assets. One phrase that has been used over and over again to reflect this is, "You need money to make money." Capital is furthermore wealth in the form of money or property owned by a person or business, while governments and corporations refer to their human-based capital as human resources of economic value. Interestingly enough, capital is also definitionally known as a seat of government. In language, a capital letter is one of the large alphabetic characters used as the first letter in writing or in printing proper names, and is sometimes used in writing for emphasis. The Latin word capital translates into English as capital crime, punishment, loss of life or civil rights, and the phonetic of capital turns into cap it all, which is the all caps name that is associated with a human being that is tied to every definition of capital. This is why people are considered to be human resources and receive identification from the government that shows your name in all capital letters, thus indicating that you have lost both your life and all of your rights and have been turned into liquidated capital. It takes a tremendous feat of immaturity for those who call themselves adults to be shown and told about this information and then to simply scoff at it as if it all means nothing. Nevertheless, all capital energy is funneled to the main source of this construct, and this energy is used for its own agenda. This is why there are capital cities, because these serve as a metonymy for the central hub of the state, province, or territory where all of the funds or energy is channeled to. This is the reason for the saying, "All roads lead to Rome." To earn is to attain a gain on some commercial or business transaction, such as earning a salary or garnering wages. The phonetic homophone is earn, which links with the word interest. Those who are buried inter and at rest in their urn. This is why in capitalism one is able to earn interest. This is not a stretch of the imagination whatsoever, as even the etymology of the word earn links us with these concepts. Autumn is the harvest time, and farmers reap what they have earned through their hard work. One noted obsolete term synonymous with earn that can be found in several dictionaries is the word grieve. This is most likely an alteration of the word yearn, which has the word earn within it without the letter Y. Esoterically, this is in reflection to the harvester of souls who comes to reap each of us into the afterlife and see what it has earned. There is even a minutiae of sadistic humor in this connection, since humans tend to ask the question why when their loved ones have departed, and the letter Y is the one that is taken away in the word yearn to bring it down to earn. To utter is to articulate either verbally or with a cry, shout, or noise. Amazingly enough, the word utter is by general definition to put as currency into circulation. Circulation is the orderly movement of things through a circuit which constitutes the flow, and with flow we have our link to the sea with its flowing waterways. A withdrawal is known as the act of taking out money or other capital. This comes from the prefix word with, meaning against, such as a fight with his brother, and the suffix word draw, meaning inhale, gain. Therefore, to withdraw is to be against gain. The word drawl from withdrawal is phonetically pronounced drawl, which means to speak or utter slowly with vowels greatly prolonged. This is the general depiction of how a zombie speaks, because the great metaphor of the governments, corporations, secret societies, and rulers of this operation is to tell us that we are the living dead, or zombies that are controlled in this energetic operation. Salt is a white crystalline form of most often sodium chloride, used to season and preserve food. A salt is also a sailor, and there we have our immediate connection to the sea, which is obviously salt water. This is where the common phrase comes from of a man being worth his salt, because he or she is able to generate a charge within the energetic system. The etymology of the word salt is derived from the Latin sal, meaning salt, and is why we have monetary salaries and sales. In the military, people salute each other, or in the public realm give greetings and salutations. In religious terms, mankind is told that they will receive salvation for their sins, which would come from uman. Salomon is the Latin word for David, because Saturn is worshipped by the occult elite as the Star of David, the line of kings that Jesus is said to be produced from. David, in biblical terms, was the second king of Israel in succession to Saul, and a lesser-known secondary meaning of the noun David is that of an underdog. The underdog is always expected to lose because of its serious disadvantages. But as many story writers have told it, the underdog always comes in near the end of the game to prove everyone wrong by winning the day. Those who do not understand the astronomical aspects of the allegories will remain stupefied while worshipping fictional characters of their own imagining. Cashier is a noun used to indicate an employee of a bank who receives and pays out money. Today, and for quite some time, there has not been one cashier doing their job, because no actual money is being received or paid out, since fractional reserve notes are not money, but only a promise to pay money sometime in the future. This abstract concept is incredibly difficult for many people to comprehend, but is true nonetheless. Just so it is not overlooked, a cashier is also a person responsible for receiving payments for goods and services, such as in a shop or a restaurant. As a verb that was derived from service on a ship, to cashier someone is to dismiss them from service, and especially to dismiss them in disgrace. This is why to label someone a cashier as a noun only tells half of the story. They need to create the living action of their work, the verb, which is to cashier each customer. And once the transaction is complete, the customer has been cashiered or dismissed from the service that the business provided them, with complete disgrace. To kite something is to increase the amount of a check fraudulently. A kite is also an object flown in the wind that is tied to the end of a string. Usually the object is flag-like, which indicates the fraud known as a false flag. This is the reason that the enormous fraud in government and banking is so closely linked with the numerous false flag operations that occur throughout the world. A flag is also known as a jack, and a jack is also by definition a small worthless amount, and a man who serves as a sailor. To borrow is to burrow, as the etymology shows, again linking us with the burying of the dead, and the suffix word rowing, rowing, gives us our link to the law of the sea. The term borrow came out of the Middle English borwen, from the Old English borgian, which was akin to the Old English bjorgan, meaning to preserve. To preserve something is to conceal it or bury it, and the word bury is linked with the Old English bjorgan, since bury was derived from the Old English bergan that was linked to the Old High German berkan. This is also why in commerce we have bargains or bargain bins. To summarize, to borrow something is to take it from its burrowed place of preservation and use it temporarily. It is therefore lent to someone, which is why there is the religious period in the spring called Lent, which is a period of 40 days from Ash Wednesday to Holy Saturday. It is Ash Wednesday because this is where the ashes of the dead have been earned. The number 40 is extraordinarily significant to the controllers during each Passover, including the significant Passover between the ages, which is why the Keystone XL pipeline is a significant project of theirs right now. XL is simply the Roman numerals for 40, and a keystone is the central building block at the top of an arch, or vault. A vault is a burial chamber or tomb, and these projects both signify the end of the age that has been completed and the burrowing of this world as we now know it. The prefix bur is Norwegian and Swedish for cage, and o is French for water, hence to cage water, which is why our body is made of mostly water that is caged by its iron blood cells. The first two letters of account, AC, is the abbreviation for alternating current, and the final word is count, giving us the alternating current count, which is electricity that is likened to the ebb and flow of the tides that are brought about by the moon. This is also known as a meter count, and the etymology of the word meter is linked with many other words that are tied with the word moon. The prefix of re means to do it again, and port for a ship's docking station, otherwise known as a harbor, pier, or wharf. To report would mean to dock again. Amortization is in practical terms known as the payment of an obligation in a series of transfers. Esoterically, we are going through a series of spiritual and physical transfers to pay back an endless debt, because an amortization is also the liquidation of a debt. The prefix amor is in Roman mythology the god of love, the counterpart of the Greek eros, as shown by the German word amor, meaning eros, Cupid, and the Turkish amor, for god of love, Cupid. The Latin amor translates as love, Cupid, affair. Many other languages also use the word amor to reflect this definition. Mort is from the French mort, meaning death, and Iza means prostitute in Spanish. Hence, amortization would mean that in death we are prostituted by the god of love to continue a series of transfers for the liquidation of a debt. Savings is a matter of faith. To be saved or to receive salvation is to have savings. Without savings, one is said to be doomed. When people receive a windfall or get money either from their job or from an unexpected source, they all too often pronounce, "Thank God," because they feel that the money has saved them. It has nothing to do with God. This is the occult reason for monetary units that are buried in the banks being called savings, because these monetary faith units are charges that are given to the dead who will be resurrected from this given pledge of power. This is the true basis for the United States currency pronouncing on its notes that, "In God we trust." Balance is where the boat finds its level and its passengers are no longer in danger of being thrown overboard. In accounting, one has to balance their books, while in a store, the cash in and cash out involves a float that needs to be balanced each day, lest the business go underwater. Debtor is a phonetic for dead oar, meaning someone who is no longer able to be an oarsman. A Latin word for criminal debtor was columnarius, which also meant someone who is condemned at columna maenea, which in Rome at the time of Cicero was a column used to post the names of debtors by their creditors. More esoterically, the column is indicating the spinal column, which has our signature of debt written upon it. The Latin columnarium translates as pillar tax, tax on house pillars, which was applied to fancy houses with pillars, and since the body is considered a fancy house by those in power, with a pillar called a spine, the governments and rulers of the world feel that they have a right to tax everything that it does. Banks or accountants keep track of their numbers using columnar books, as related to the column, and shown by the Latin columnar, meaning marble quarry, stone quarry. A quarry in basic English definition is a person who is the aim of an attack, fair game, prey, by a hostile person or influence. It is something that is hunted or caught for food. Banks, governments, and corporations do not pick their words and terms carelessly. All of this is by design and done with specific intent and purpose. A draft is the depth of a vessel's keel below the surface of water. It is also known as a current of air, which would be necessary to move a merchant vessel. In banking, a draft is a document that orders the payment of money from one bank to another one. According to nearly any dictionary, credit is belief. It is faith. Also by definition, credit is an accounting entry acknowledging income or capital items, and since all fiat let it be so currency is in actuality credit, accounting entries are all that exist, which is why the books are always balanced. If this were not true, then why are people paying back credit with credit? Belief and faith are the only forms of currency that are recognized in this unsustainable system, and it would be wise to recognize the significance of these statements. A trader is someone who buys and sells because they are interested in short-term profits. Phonetically spoken, a trader is a trader. This is because anyone who is willing to create a duality of destruction and competitive retribution against their fellow species is a traitor, not only to everyone that they seek to manipulate, but is also a self-traitor. Look at the stock market. Everyone involved in this scheme is called a traitor, and for good reason. The capital name that nearly everyone exists under connects everyone to this exchange to be traded as capital stock on the stock market, or the ET mark. Humanity is considered the stock, or animals that are kept for use and profit, which is why we are human resources. We are chained by the bonds of this prison, which is why there are both stocks and bonds. As related to the sea, a stock is the crosspiece that is on an anchor. The other parts of an anchor give more of the sea-related parts of the game away, since a bill is the end of the anchor hook, and a fluke is the part of the anchor that fastens into the ground. Some sails are just flukes, while others are worked for with more difficulty. The crown is also involved, since this is the middle bottom curved portion of the anchor. Nothing has been left out. The logistics of this are taken care of through the parliamentary, congressional, and court systems, because stock is also known as a base for soup. What? Soup? What does that have to do with the court systems or parliamentary and congressional law? Simply because stock is also known as broth, and the Latin word ius translates into English as law, right, soup, gravy, broth, ordinance, decree, canon. That's the gravy train, which is a windfall or an exploited source of easy money. Use is furthermore where the word justice is derived, and broth gives us the reasoning behind the secret society brotherhoods that shape and monitor this operation. In law dictionaries, there is a term known as jus abutendi, that is a Roman and civil law decreeing the right of a property owner to make full use of said property, even to the extent of wasting or destroying it. This is the reason that the controllers are so intent on owning everything and declaring it to be under their dominion, to destroy it all at their own whims and discretions. I'll end this segment with arguably the greatest duality of them all, heaven and hell. This is seen in the words hired and fired. To be hired is to actually be hired or lifted up to a higher state of being or life, while to be fired is to be fired, sent to hell and lowered in status, position, lifestyle, security, comfort, and everything good that heaven is claimed to be.